Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So today I've got Austin here from Concurrence to talk about oracles. So oracles are a topic in the Ethereum community that serve a special purpose. And Austin, before we jump into that, you want to say hey to everybody?
Hey everybody.
Hey. So Austin, tell us about the oracle problem and what an oracle is.
So a smart contract in general is going to be deterministic, right? It is decentralized and deterministic. So when one miner goes through and runs a transaction, every other miner in the network is going to have to run that same transaction, and it's going to get the same result, deterministic. The problem with that is you want to be able to go out and hit an API or get some sort of external web data. There's, just a ton of information you could get that you could have your contract sort of react to. And a smart contract itself can't reach out to hit that API. First of all, the limitations, the smart contract doesn't do that. It doesn't make API calls. But even if it could, you'd have all these miners all making calls, and they'd get different results. They'd, DDoS, some web server. It just wouldn't work. So the Oracle problem is basically getting that off-chain data on-chain and kind of providing a little layer in between that where an oracle hits an API or some other source of information, gets that information, and then puts it on chain for then a smart contract to sort of logically react to.
Cool. So I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit and maybe ask you about a couple of things that you mentioned in that explanation. So first, we've got the blockchain, right? And kind of sounds like what you're saying is the blockchain is a bit of a closed system. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, inside the Ethereum blockchain, all the nodes on the network, right? Some of these nodes are miners, right? They've opted into the mining process to mine, the blocks, mine the transactions whenever data is written to the blockchain, right? So why couldn't some of those miners talk to the outside world, right? Like that's kind of the problem that you're describing. Like why couldn't that happen?
So it's got to be deterministic, right? Like when I hit a smart contract and I say, increment this value by 1, and it's at 28, then all the miners increment that value by 1 once that's mined, and everyone gets 29, the next answer, and it's completely it's deterministic, right?
Right.
But if some miners tried to reach out to an API, let's say they were trying to get temperature data here in Colorado, it could fluctuate a little bit, right? They could get different answers, first of all, so it's not going to be deterministic. They could take down the server because all those miners would be hitting the server at the same time. There could be downtime with the server just because, right? So there's just all this kind of real world sort of classic web app problems with getting something into a smart contract in a deterministic and decentralized way.
Right. And so part of that problem is because the smart contracts themselves is essentially like duplicated code that's distributed across all these different nodes in the network, right? So, when the smart contract is deployed to the blockchain, each miner is going to get a copy of it and is going to execute, some sort of bit of functionality in that smart contract. And I guess whenever that happens, you almost have like a race condition, right? That you might see in another system, right?
Yeah. So if one guy said the temperature is 70 degrees, but another guy got 60 degrees, and another guy got 0 because the API was down, that would just mess up the whole system.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So how does an oracle solve that problem?
So it's sort of just that, it's that kind of an outside layer, right? The oracle will go get that information and bring it back in and then write it to the contract. So it's sort of the oracle's job to handle the fact that maybe those numbers might be different, maybe the service might be down at the time. Its job is to get that data correctly on chain, no matter what's going on with the rest of the world.
Yeah. So how does it get that data on chain?
So if it's an API call, it just makes a classic web request, gets the data that it needs. It could be something more. It could be, some kind of, a bunch of Internet of Things objects just outside measuring the temperature and then actually writing them on chain, right? But basically, they make any kind of classic call to any kind of API or web server and then write that data in. And if there's any downtime or there's any problems, it's up to the Oracle to make sure that they kind of work around that.
Okay. So you have this Oracle that's, writing data to the blockchain. I mean, so where would that fit into a decentralized application? Like if you were, if you wanted to maybe say a user triggered some sort of action that, you needed data from the Oracle in order to perform that, like how does that work?
So in the Ethereum white paper, I think this is the first time this idea was introduced to me. They talk about like a farmer in Iowa needing to have crop insurance, right? So you could write a smart contract that said, hey, if this guy gets hailed on or this guy doesn't get enough precipitation, we need to have logic in a smart contract that automatically pays them out. So the farmer could pay ETH into the contract, go through the season of growing, and then if a hailstorm happened, he could, get into the contract and pull funds out based on the logic that says, the Oracle wrote to the contract that I got hail, so I, should get paid out because of that.
Right. So how can we trust an Oracle?
Well, that's a whole different question, right? That leads us to centralized versus decentralized oracles, right? If you have a centralized oracle, there's a lot of trust there. We have this beautiful Ethereum network where everything is decentralized, it's trustless, or as little trust as possible. And then all of a sudden you go out to a centralized oracle and it feeds you information that could be corrupted, that could be, they could have downtime, and they do. So I guess what I'm referring to is the current centralized model is Oracleized, and it works great. A lot of people use it, but there's, it's kind of scary to have such a cool network and have it all decentralized and then have this kind of choke point where you're counting on someone else to deliver you, not just deliver the information, but deliver the correct information.
Right.
If there was a smart contract that said who's going to win the Super Bowl, and this is never going to happen, but like the dudes over at Oracleize decide that they want to, they bet on the wrong team and they want to shift the results, they totally could do that.
Right.
If you had a decentralized network where there's sort of this whole kind of consensus that's formed around some sort of staked currency where all these actors are sort of submitting answers, and those that are submitting the incorrect answers sort of get penalized, and those who submit the correct answers get rewarded with the currency, and then people could pay in to have that happen, then you get a much stronger network. And there are players out there that are doing that, and I think Chainlink is probably the biggest out ahead of doing that, and I'm really looking forward to see what those guys come up with in the next year or two.
Cool. So I guess a couple things there, right? So I guess in some cases, if there was some centralized data source, and that centralized data source was really just in charge for, feeding information programmatically to the blockchain, and, that data was kind of externally verifiable, like who won the Super Bowl. Like there's not going to be much disagreement about what the data there is, right? Like this team got this score, this team got this score.
Sure, I think you can do. Yeah. Like right now, I think like I could make a smart contract that's basically like a UFC fight. I think I've seen this before on Reddit where they basically had a contract that said, you can bet on this UFC fighter or this UFC fighter, and there was a big fight, and then basically the guy who created the contract can just say this guy won or this guy won, and people basically trust him. And I don't know if that's the best way to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like in the long run, with Ethereum, we're going to need a decentralized system to provide that off-chain data. So there's neat stuff to come for sure. But right now, people can probably just feed into their contract, and people will put up with that for now.
Yeah, totally. So tell me more about some of these alternatives that you mentioned.
So you mean like alternatives in terms of people that are running oracles, or?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I guess, so that kind of leads me to more like there's like other prediction markets that are kind of out ahead of it, like Augur and Gnosis. Like they're doing prediction markets, and part of a prediction market is going to need an oracle in the resolution stage, right? So say you set up a market for like who will win the Super Bowl and everyone kind of bets on it. You're still going to need an oracle to come in at the end and say who won the Super Bowl.
Right.
So you've got guys out ahead of it. And then in terms of just in the oracle space, we talked about Oracleize, we talked about Chainlink, Reality Keys, Delphi, Zapp, Truthcoin. There's a bunch of them that are doing it, and they're I've talked to a lot of guys on a lot of the projects, and what's cool is they're not they're not in it for the money. They're building a really neat system, and they've got their heads down, and it's not about media or press or parties. Yeah. It's about the technology and making the technology work. So I think that the Ethereum community as a whole is really going to be enriched when some of these decentralized oracles start really producing, and maybe they are right now. I'm not too into it, but I should have thrown out the disclaimer in the beginning. Like, I'm just kind of learning about this stuff.
Hey, aren't we all, right?
Yep.
This is definitely an edge place to be. Life on the edge.
One thing that you mentioned was you sort of talked about a centralized data store. So even if you had a decentralized network of oracles and they were all pulling from the same place, there you've got centralization again, right? So you need to have your decentralized network of Ethereum miners, and then another layer on top of that, which is like the decentralized oracles that are getting the data, and then another layer on that where like those oracles are getting that data from all sorts of different places and then coming together to form that consensus with some sort of staked currency.
So what would be an example of the staked currency?
So, well, I mean, you would, in our world of ICOs, I hate talking about a utility token, but you could create a token that has utility, and that utility is basically staking toward your answer, right? You as an oracle are saying, I just went and got this information from this website that says the Patriots won the Super Bowl, and I'm willing to put 10 of my token up to say that I'm right. And if the rest of the world also agrees with my consensus, then we're all going to get paid out. And anybody who disagrees with us would be punished, but they're all punished and rewarded with that utility token. And there's room for attack there. I guess if you could get the whole network to say the Buffalo Bills won the Super Bowl, you could do it. But
right.
I think it's going to work like that. I think Vitalik talked about it. He talked about Schelling coin, I think, named after Thomas Schelling.
Right, I saw that blog post.
Yeah, it's like the crypto economic incentives just seem to sort of work toward the truth. It's really hard to get a whole bunch of people to make up a lie, but it's really easy to get everybody together to find the truth.
Right, yeah, that's a good call, especially when you're talking about at massive scale.
Right, exactly. And so another use of oracles, I got a couple here. So Oracleize is really good because it's like hitting all sorts of APIs, but you could also hit like Wolfram Alpha. Like there's so many sources of data all over the world that now with oracles you could go get that information and have your smart contract trigger off of that. I guess one of my other introductions to oracles was flight insurance. I think one of the actual first main net contracts I've seen was someone doing flight insurance where you could put in some ETH saying that if my flight gets canceled or something, I don't know the details of it, but if something happens with my flight, then I want to get kind of paid back in some sort of insurance, right? So I put in a little ETH, and if that flight does get canceled, and they've got to use an oracle for that, he's probably going out and crawling Southwest's website and finding out if the plane was delayed or whatever, and then that paid out to him. Right. Another use for an oracle might be like randomness. Randomness is pretty hard on chain. You kind of have to do commit reveal schemes and all sorts of the random, right? It costs gas to get good random on chain, and some people would probably argue that random still isn't good, and people who know way more than I do. But you can always just go ask an oracle, and the oracle could give you a random number. But again, it's is that oracle centralized? Could that oracle say, that random number is my lucky number where I get a win from the contract?
Right. So tell me a bit about you have here talking about the gas prices of decentralized consensus. You want to tell me more about that?
Yeah. So if you think about it, you've got okay. So let's just make the assumption that we're gonna not centralize this thing. We're gonna go decentralized.
Uh-huh.
And what are going to be the downfalls of this decentralization? Well, it's going to be a lot more expensive, right? And there are tricks to that. But so say in a centralized system, when the Patriots win the Super Bowl, one dude spends one little bit of gas, and he spends probably 30 cents of gas and writes it to the contract, and it's done, right? But with a decentralized system, you're going to have all these actors, both good and bad, putting content in and sort of almost like voting with their currency, right?
Right.
So that's a tricky thing to do. That's a lot more complicated and a lot more gas that gets burned. And my best solution right now is to sort of still use a decentralized system like IPFS, or some sort of protocol that's still peer-to-peer, where we can all communicate, where we can kind of sort of announce what we're thinking, like, hey, I think the Patriots won. And of course you couldn't do that because then you'd have copycats, right? So it'd be like, hey, I think the hash of the Patriots won the Super Bowl, right?
Right.
Right? You'd have to do some sort of commit reveal, but still you sort of could kind of set up some sort of consensus off-chain first, and once enough sort of momentum is moved toward a consensus, then you could start having people like actually write to the chain. And it's still going to cost more. There's still going to be multiple people that will have to write to the chain, or maybe one guy writes to the chain, says the Patriots won, but another guy says the Broncos won. Then you've got to have more people coming in to write to the chain to stake their currency to sort of outweigh the bad actor.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, I have a few questions for you, kind of just general questions about Ethereum. But before we move on to those, is there anything else you wanted to let us know about oracles or thoughts on the matter?
Oh man, I love it, man. I love the technology, like Ethereum in general. There are those goosebump moments that happen all the time, and I welcome new people into the community, and I hope that a lot of people taught me how to do things too, right? Like I got on YouTube and learned how to do a lot of this stuff. And so, what you're doing, where you're getting videos out there and lots of content to put tools in the toolbox, that's awesome stuff. And, as a whole, as an ecosystem, let's view Ethereum as a utility, not a speculative investment. And let's make cool products. Let's build.
Yeah, yeah. How do we say it, right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. So yeah, I got a couple of questions for you. So what do you think, like where if you were to peer around the corner a little bit, where do you see this technology going, like realistically?
Oh gosh. Well, there are a lot more intelligent people out there than me on this kind of stuff. But obviously, we've got scaling to work on, right?
Uh-huh.
Like there's, one dude right now is doing some airdrop, and all of my games are costing 5 times as much to play as they used to, right? And that's no good. Like when I'm out to lunch and I want to onboard someone and we pull out our phones, and his transaction is going to take an hour and a half to go through, like that, there goes my whole demo, right? So
Right.
scaling is going to be big, obviously. I think like the layer 2 solutions to kind of speed stuff up. State channels are doing a lot for that. Like the Spank Chain dude is like, a lot of those guys are like really pioneering a lot of really neat things. And yeah, I'm excited for the technology. I don't know if I'm the best guy to talk to about what actually is coming down the line, because I'm just riding the wave. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you think the future of dApps are? Like where do you kind of see this going? Maybe with, just kind of like what you're seeing come out now, and where do you think we can be kind of like within a year?
Right. I think onboarding is key, right? It's like
Right.
how many people have Trust or Cypher or Toshi on their phone? How many people have MetaMask going? Like, are people afraid of it? How do we get people into it? How do we, for me, it's always like a social situation. Like I don't, there's not a lot of guys that I onboard remotely. It's more like I'm out for a beer with someone, and I'm just like, pull up Trust, let's play a game,
Right.
right? So there's a lot of that sort of one-to-one onboarding that happens, but I think a lot of these games are gonna do it. I mean, I'm sure you look at what a beautiful technology it is, and then we're over here breeding cats and killing monsters, but that's onboarding, right? That's
Right.
bringing new customers in, and that's awesome.
Right. Right. So there's definitely something to the speculative get rich quick, and also the entertainment factor of playing games, right?
It's true.
So I have an interesting question that I started asking people. So how do you spell the word Dapp or Dapp? How do you format the letters, and how do you pronounce it?
So I definitely say Dapp, right? But I'm also not. So let's talk about like multiple ways, right? So you've got the cool D with the dash.
Yeah, special
and
character
D.
D.
Capitalize the A or not, right? And I've seen a lot of people do lowercase d, uppercase A, and I'm the other way around. I'm a like make it look like a normal word guy. Capital D, lowercase A, PP.
Right.
Again, disclaimer, I am not a source of any kind of knowledge in that.
No, it's just a question I like to ask everybody, because it seems like there's not a consensus, if I were to use an Ethereum term.
Yeah.
So I did have a guest on last week who pointed me to the yellow paper, I believe, where it was supposed to be spelled lowercase d, capital A, like email, Dapp. So maybe I'm getting that slightly wrong, but that's just like the history of all kinds of words, right? Like, just because it was intentioned. This is GIF and GIF all over again.
The GIF argument. Yeah. Capitalize the D.
Yep. That's exactly what he said as well. So.
Yeah. Really? Is that the whole GIF thing? Like, it's a good. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I agree with him.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Well, Austin, this has been a great conversation. Before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you'd like for the people watching to know?
Build. Let's build stuff. Like,
let's do it.
Get your friends on MetaMask. Get your friends on Trust. Get your friends on Cypher. Like, get your friends on Toshi. Like, get them playing games. It's $5, right? Like, get their QR code out, shoot them a little bit of ETH, give them enough to pay for the gas, and it'll take off. Like, that's what we need, is just more people playing these games and showing these games to other people. And you know what? It's a great technology. Let's go beyond games. Let's start using stuff.
Right. No, that's great. I think that's a great way to kind of get the average user on, is give them something they're already familiar with, and I think that's awesome. Well, Austin, I've enjoyed our conversation today. Everyone, join me in thanking Austin from wherever you are watching this video. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this, where I talk to people who are building real things on top of Ethereum. And until then, thanks for watching Dapp University.